Hey YouTube friends, great to have you back. I want to show you today a little project that I'm working on. It's a table, a dining room table, but it's a small one. It's just 5 feet long by 3 feet wide. Very simple project. I think anybody can really do at home. I'm going to show you the tools that I'm using, but you can use a bunch of different tools. So why don't you come over here and let me show you some of these tools that I'm using today. All right, well, we're making this project today out of I guess you could say normal wood. Is type of stuff that you find at Home Depot, any box store like that. We're using 2x10s, and we bought a 12-foot 2x10, but we cut it at the store right in half, so they're 6 feet. 2x10. I just put them on the floor at Home Depot, make sure they weren't super twisted or bent or anything like that. Our main form of joinery is going to be dowels. So I actually have a self-centering jig here for dowels, and this was like $20 at Harbor Freight. Pretty simple but very useful. And so basically we put the dowels, I have some dowels here that I bought from big box store, but you don't even need to buy these if you don't want. You can just get like straight up long dowels, get a hardwood like oak, and then cut it at the length that you need it. The doweling jig is really easy. You put it on the piece of wood, you tighten it, and then it'll center it at the width of the plank. You make your hole. Then after you make your hole, you put your little marker in that hole, and then this little point will transfer the location of that hole to the next piece, and that's how you know where to put the next hole. So I am going to be using these C channels to keep the table straight because of the construction that we're going to be doing. This table has legs that I'm ordering from Amazon, and they'll go on each corner. And so if you don't put some sort of metal piece or something, it's actually going to bow in the middle. So we don't want that to happen. This is simple C channel from Home Depot. I made these holes. They're not very pretty. I'm not a metal worker, but I basically made them about 1/4 inch wide, and we're going to use some coarse thread, these inserts that are going to help us. The insert will go under this, obviously, in the wood, and then we put a screw right into the inserts. I am going to route an area for these to drop into the wood, so I'll show you that as we go through the process. Never forget to hydrate. I have a track saw. Not everybody has this, so don't worry if you don't have it. This is very doable without. I like to make the pieces of wood look really, really pretty because they're made for construction, so obviously they don't look great when you buy them. I do have a planer. I'm also going to be using over here my jointer. And so now I realize you're saying I don't have those tools. How can I do this? Don't worry. You can do this with a straight edge. Look, basically the jointer is going to give us a straight edge, right? Flat. You can do that with a straight edge and a circular saw. You can also do it with a table saw. The idea is that these planks are going to be about 1.25 inches thick rather than like a 1 3/4 thick, which they are right now. So I'm going to be taking about 1/2 inch from the top. I'm going to be using my router. Literally, I just bought this plunge router from Harbor Freight. Heard great things about it, so you're going to be seeing me using it. I'm going to be putting this on a time lapse so that you can watch everything I'm doing. And if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments section. I'm also going to be putting a link to the legs that I purchased for this project. All right. I bought construction grade pine 2x10s from Home Depot, so I began by milling them. I usually pass one of the sides, and then I also do one of the faces. And I do the face, and then I flip it, and I do the other side of the same face, even though I have a 6-inch jointer. And then that allows me to pass it through the planer, and I get pretty even sides and pretty flat pieces of wood. So I'm happy with that. Hey guys, so I just finished milling the wood. It's right over there, and that took me about 2 hours. That's what happens when you buy construction grade pine and try to mill it. The next step now is I'm going to start working on putting the boards together. I'm actually going to create a bevel between each plank just to give it that kind of rustic feel to the table. Here I'm laying out the wood and just putting the pieces on the table, and I noticed that they were not even
meaning they were not the same thickness. So I'm taking them through the planer one last time. Since the gauge on my planer is broken, I wanted to make sure they were all absolutely perfect so that it would be a lot easier to join them later. Then after I had that all set up, I started putting the markings on for the dowels. So I was using my self-centering dowel jig, and then you saw there me with a rubber mallet. That's what I'm using to hammer the little dowels into the holes. I start by making the dowels and then doing putting the dowels in and doing a dry fit. So I'm doing the holes, doing a dry fit, and I'm going to show you in just a little bit what the holes look like. Here you see them. That's what my dowel holes look like. I made the markings, and then I put my self-centering jig on it, doweling jig, and it makes those nice holes. I would sand them on top so that they would be nice and flush. But like I told you at the beginning, what you do is that you make those holes, then you put the marker in it, as you see me doing here, and then you transfer that marking into the other piece of wood. So you bring them together and you transfer the mark, and that's how you know where to put the dowel or the self-centering doweling jig on the other piece of wood. It's really a simple process, so don't be scared by it. It's actually very, very simple. Go ahead and sand all of your holes really nice and flat after you're done with making them, and then you can continue with the dry fit, and then you can start gluing, and you're going to see me do that in just a little bit. Here you see me finishing off all of my dowel holes and with the jig, and then I went ahead and started applying some glue and gluing the pieces together. So I went ahead and I actually did the bevels, the lines that are in between each plank with my jointer. I placed the jointer fence at a 45-degree angle, and it allows me to make really nice even bevels. And so here you see I'm putting two pieces at a time together, and then I'm gluing them all together and letting them dry separately. I have some pipe clamps that you're going to need. You're going to need some longer clamps. Pipe clamps are going to be your cheapest. Don't go to Harbor Freight to get those, though. Go to a good place, get some good ones, because you're going to need it there. I was cleaning the glue from underneath each one, because you should have some nice squeeze out that comes out of in between your planks, and then I was putting it all together. As you can see, that 2x4 in the middle that I put there was to keep the top nice and straight. Here I started by just planing a little bit by hand, and then I was cutting the ends to size. I wasn't completely cutting it together just yet, but I was starting to do that. Then here you see me with the router. I was beginning to make the channels for the C channel.
All right, so I started making the grooves for the C channel. It's actually gonna just drop in there like so. Now I still need to get the router in here and do a pass where I lower this by 2/16 so that the actual piece of metal goes into it. I already made adjustments for it in the depth of these cuts that I made. So that's one. I've been using this as a guide because it's a really straight piece of maple that I have. And then I'm about to turn the table to the other side and do the same process over here. I offset these bars about 6 inches. This was the end of it is 6 inches from the end here. And then 3 inches from the side. This table's only 36 inches wide, so you have 3 inches on each side. The idea is that this piece of metal will rest inside. It will not hit any legs or anything like that.
What I was doing earlier was just the practice. I was practicing on a piece of wood, a separate piece of wood, and now I was ready to do it on the table. So I started making my little channels and just making sure that everything was nice and straight. I used a really straight piece of maple that I had in my shop, and then you see me kind of carving everything else out. This took a little bit of time, but it was well worth it. The only thing that I realized is that I really made a mistake because my C channel that I bought from Home Depot was too narrow. I really needed a wider one.
All right, so I just finished with this one. I made the grooves on the sides just like I had said, and then I actually went down 2/16, and now when this falls in, let me make sure it falls in basically flat into the table. Okay, so this is good because the legs that I'm gonna put on this table are number one, it doesn't have a breadboard. Number two, the legs that I'm gonna put are only corner legs. And usually what happens is it tends to bow right in the middle, and we don't want that. So this piece of metal is gonna keep it from doing that. I'm gonna put some threaded inserts in here now, and then we're gonna fasten it to the table. And what we do, I'm gonna do the same obviously over there. What we do is that we really, we screw in, we make it pretty tight on the center. Don't over screw anything, right? Don't over tighten anything. But we'll make it probably the tightest in the center. And then we'll do it just snug on the sides so that the wood can expand, because it's gonna go sideways. So usually it moves this direction, left and right. And you want it to have that play, okay? Because if not, it'll start cracking and stuff. So I'm gonna do the same thing over there now, and that'll also help keep the table nice and straight for us.
Here I flipped the table and just began doing the same process on the other side. As I was saying before, the channel was a little bit too narrow, which gave me actually some problem with my threaded inserts, and I couldn't even use them. Here's what you see me here kind of struggling with. So I ended up having to pivot from that, and I ended up using just some screws into it with a washer to keep them from going through. That's what you do. You got to improvise sometimes when it doesn't work. Here it was just painting the channel black and making sure that it was nicely put together in there. You're going to see in just a little bit what it looks like, and I explain a little bit further what happened and some of the issues with it. But overall, it turned out nice. I'm cleaning it there and just making sure everything looks nice and neat. But I would definitely recommend a wider channel in the future.
All right, so we have here basically the finished product. I had to pivot from our original, what I was gonna do originally. By the way, I painted these with just some nice Rust-Oleum. Originally I was gonna put threaded inserts in, but something that I didn't account for was that I really needed a wider channel, probably more like 2-inch or 3 inches, but I chose the small one, which meant that this middle piece, as soon as I tried to put this threaded insert, this is the size that I had, it would like fall apart. So I decided to just pre-drill some holes, and then I put in some wood screws in, coarse thread wood screws, and that allowed it to just snap in there. I also have a washer on top, and the washer fits nicely inside the channel. But I adjusted this one. I put this one nice and tight, and then like I told you, the ends were a little bit freer or looser, I guess you could say. But that turned out okay. It's not my original plan, but just like anything else in carpentry, if the first thing doesn't work, just try a different way. So they're in there, it's looking good, and I'm gonna continue on. I was sanding a little bit this bottom just to make it look nice, and then I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over and then start sanding the top and working on the rest.
I began by sanding with a 120 grit and then went down to a 220 grit, and that gave it a really nice finish. I went to do a bevel around the edge of the table with my router and then realized my router bit was messed up, and so it actually messed up my whole corner. So here you see me cutting off part of that whole side. Thankfully, I had left some extra width on the top. I always encourage you to leave some room in your width and length to cut at the end. Here, my wife is doing the staining. She's the staining department in our family, and she's great with colors. So she makes a little bit of Minwax Early American with some Minwax Espresso. That brought up some of the grain, but also gave it a nice, rich, dark brown color, which is what the customer wanted for this table. She usually tests a lot of different types of colors, and she comes up with what's best for it.
Well, here's the final product. The table. We did a mixture of 2 Minwax finishes. We used this early American, and we actually mixed it with a little bit of espresso, which is another darker stain, and we put 3 coats of polyurethane, and we used the Varathane Polyurethane, which is fast drying. You can see it here, and we did a satin finish. It came out really nice. We did distress the table a little bit on the top. Took my goodies and just started hitting the table and scratching and things like that, just so that it would look a little bit more distressed. That's kind of normal. Like it is not super thick, which makes it look a little bit modern. And also these legs are from Amazon, and so you get 4 of them for about $65. Pretty good deal for these legs. So you can build this table for under $100 if you get creative. But obviously, once I put the C channels and all of that in them, it's probably around 100, maybe a little bit more. But a good deal for what you're getting. I did put the coat of poly on it and put the legs on, and it turned out really, really nice. So we're going to be delivering it tomorrow to our customers. So I just wanted to let you know and show you how it turned out. Anyways, thank you for watching. And if you have a chance, just give it a like and help us build our channel some more, okay? So I appreciate your support. Take care.